What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast. I've got something really special to share with you today.
Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a ballroom dance professional, a life coach, and a peak performance expert. I'm part of a group of motivated people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. We believe in the magic of ballroom dance. It has taught us how to improve our bodies, challenge our minds, and inspire our souls. And in return, I want to share those lessons with the world. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life.
What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm so excited for you to join me today. As I said in the intro, I have something super special to share with you today. I was just taken aback yesterday. I received a message, and we get a lot of messages and notes, and we appreciate you guys sending them out to us and messaging us on all the different outlets that you listen to your podcasts on. We love hearing from you and hearing about how the podcast has helped you. Please send them in, and we get questions here and there, and we do get a lot of questions, but this message sort of stood out to me, and I felt like I wanted to address it, but I also felt like so many of us have gone through what this person is feeling and what they're experiencing, and we've talked about some of the things in part, but I also wanted to share with you just the message that I sent back to this person, in hopes that it'll help you, and in hopes that it'll maybe help you put together some of the things we have talked about on the podcast, and maybe bring up a few other things here and there. So I asked for permission to share this recording that I did special for this person, and I sent it out to them, and they said I could go ahead and share it with everybody. So obviously I won't use their name, but I felt like it was an important message and an important thing to talk about. So to give you a little background, this young dancer is getting ready to dance this weekend for one of the majors. The comp is called Emerald Ball. It's held in California, and it's definitely one of the major competitions in the U.S. It's a huge competition, and there's a lot of importance to it because it's one of the majors. And so some of the things that we talked about, or that I talked to her about in this message, are addressing the message that she sent to us. And so anyway, without further ado, we'll cut into that message, and I just want to share it with you guys, and I hope it helps bring some things to light, and maybe it'll help you as well. And I am so grateful for you guys to all listen and enjoy the message. We'll cut to that now. Hey, what's up? I read your message, and I just felt like it'd probably be easier if I just recorded a message for you. I had so much to tell you, and appreciate your candor and your honesty, and I appreciate you letting us know that the podcast is helping you out. So I just wanted to get on and share a quick message with you about what you had messaged me on, and really try to give you a couple ideas and tips on things you can do to help your comp experience and help your journey along the way. So a few things. I took some notes a little bit on the message you sent, and because I just wanted to make sure to cover a number of things for you. You had mentioned that it was hard to stay grounded and focused with all the changes that are going on in life, and honestly, that's kind of a bad summarization of what you said, but the idea really behind being able to stay grounded and focused is really understanding what it is that you're going after, and understanding what your ultimate goal is. And we'll talk a little bit about goals and focus in just a second, but knowing what it is that you want is in so many instances, the hardest part of the battle. It's amazing to me in the coaching that I do with pretty much all different facets, whether they're dancers or athletes or business people. The coaching that I do with them in so many instances comes right back around to trying to figure out what it is that they want. And so I really have to encourage you to think about what it is that you want. Now, sometimes it's strange because we get into these hobbies, these sports like dance, and we get in and there's something about it that we love that moves our soul, and we start going at it headstrong. And when we have parents that'll back us and support us in this process, oftentimes we jump in, we go headstrong, and we put everything we have into it. And then we find ourselves somewhere in the middle thinking, what in the world am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Because along the way, we've forgotten what it was that gave us that passion or that love. What was it that inspired us? So really, I'm talking about two things. Decide what it is that you want. And I know that you're in it right now and you're moving forward, you're fully committed. But what is it that you want? Is it a championship? Is it to feel good on the floor when you're dancing? Is it to share your soul with the audience members? Is it to just win the trophy? Like, is that really what you're after, or is there something more that you're after? And so that's really where we start. What is it that you want? One of the things in your message that really stood out to me, and what you had asked was, and I'm going to jump to the message here, because I feel like this is such a normal thing. When I'm working with all of the peak performance athletes that I have, this is so common and it comes up often. So I want to just share or read it one more time here. It says, I'm having trouble with visualizations. I'm worried that because I see everything so clearly in my visualizations, it'll frustrate me if it doesn't happen the way it happens in my mind. And honestly, if you've listened to the podcast, I believe in visualizing and being able to see clearly what it is that you're shooting after, what it is that you'd like to attain. And honestly, with all of the competitors that I've trained and taught before, this is a pretty normal thing. So first and foremost, you can have and find a little comfort in knowing that you're par for the course. It's understandable that you'd be concerned about that because honestly, it's not a guarantee, right? There is no guarantee. There's only the hard work that we go through to attain a goal that we've set out for. And that's why we talked about, getting clear on what it is that you want. Now, the interesting thing is that when you get clear on what it is that you want, now we start into this visualization process. And the visualizations are a tool. They're something we can use to help us be able to see clearly what it is that we're going after. Now, not sure if you've heard of the law of attraction, but honestly, the law of attraction has now been around for a while. There's a great little documentary called The Secret. It's kind of fun to watch. It's like part movie, part documentary, and it's very cleverly filmed. But it's a great show, and it gives a pretty good understanding of the law of attraction. The idea, simply put, is that the universe has laws that we operate on. There's waves in the world. There's things we can't see that that work, but they're still there even though we can't see them. And honestly, the universe will bring you what it is that you are shooting for if you can be clear on what it is that you shoot for. Now, there's a lot that goes in behind that. I'm not going to go into that in depth. I know we have in other podcasts, but generally speaking, like attracts like. So you've noticed at school or at work or even just walking through the mall, you look at the people that are hanging out with each other, and they're all people of a very similar feather, so to speak. right? And that's that old adage that birds of a feather flock together. And that's because like attracts like. That same resonating frequency that we operate on, because we are made up of energy, if we can vibrate or operate on that same energy, then the things that are like that will find their way to that energy. And I know it's really kind of esoteric, but there are scientific things that prove this. And of course, all of the experiences from the successful people in the world. But you have to get clear on what it is you want. And the visualizations part of it is about teaching your mind and your body to, for lack of a better way of saying it, to vibrate on that frequency so that you can attract the things that are just like that. Now, the interesting thing about this is that as a whole, the laws of the universe don't put judgment. They don't actually work off of good and bad. That's a human thing. That's us deciding what's good and what's bad. But the universe just says, look, that's vibrating at this frequency. So other things that vibrate at that frequency need to be matched up. And so we see that. We see it all the time. I won't bore you with, quoting the science behind it, but there's tons of science that proves it. And like I said before, there's lots of experience that proves it as well. So the goal is to continue the visualizations and continue to do that element so that we can continue to vibrate in a frequency that can attract other energy that is like what it is that we want. Now, the challenging part is oftentimes people's way of deciding what they want is by saying what they don't want. And that sounds crazy when I put it that way, but you're probably guilty of it. I know I've been guilty of it, and I hear people guilty of it all the time. People say, well, I don't want this, and I don't want that, and I don't want this, and I don't want that. And you say, well, what do you want? And they go, well, I don't want that and this and that. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to act like that. I don't want to be like this. And we talk about what we don't want. I don't want to, you are a dancer. So we say, I don't want to mess up my routines. I don't want to dance poorly. I don't want to disappoint my coaches. I don't want to mess up the routines. I don't want to let down my partner. These are all things you don't want, and unfortunately, when there's energy and emotion put in behind those statements, it gives those statements power. And so if you have ever caught yourself, or maybe you can catch yourself now, if you ever caught yourself saying what you don't want with energy and with emotional state behind it, you're probably headed right towards it. And it's probably trying to find its way towards you. Now, there are oodles of examples of that and in the world, and maybe you've experienced it before. I know that if you've ever been late somewhere and you're driving somewhere, a lot of people have this experience. They start thinking, gosh, I don't want to get pulled over. I know I'm speeding. I know I'm breaking the rules, and I know I'm breaking the rules, and I don't want to get caught. And so you start focusing on what you don't want. I don't want to get caught. I don't want to. And so you're looking all over, and sure enough, the lights turn on behind you. You get pulled over. You hear a lot of people talk about this. I hope it hasn't happened to you specifically, but this is common. Now, is that a coincidence? Maybe. Or did you, on a very peak state or in a very peak state, attract that to you? And that's the big question. There's a lot of things that we don't understand about how this universe works still, but we do and have started to notice and recognize that the things that we want are the part that we have to put focus into, not the things we don't want. Okay, so that's one little element. Now, I'm not saying that you are doing that, okay, so don't get me wrong, but I have to make sure that we talk about the language of it behind the scenes so that we can at least start to build a foundation of what you can operate off of in the future. So when you say, well, I see my visualization so clear and I don't want to be frustrated about it, And part of that is because if you don't get what you want, oftentimes the first thing that we do is we start to lose a little hope. And you had mentioned, you didn't want to lose faith in the idea. Well, the thing is that hope and faith are kind of interesting because it's what we need when things don't go as well as we hoped they would go. And so, we don't want you to lose hope or lose faith, but here's the thing. We have to backtrack for just a second. And I know you're young and you're in your competing career. Maybe you've been competing for a while, but but I have to point out that with every major athlete, every successful business person, all the people that have found success in the world, if you ask them what were the defining moments, oftentimes at first we've trained ourselves to talk about the good things. And so we do. We talk about the good things. We talk about what went well. But if you really dig in to most people that have been successful, really, they'll dig back down and go, there was this one moment where everything fell apart, where everything didn't go well, where everything wasn't what I thought, where I was in my darkest moment, and they made a change. They made a decision. They learned something so powerful and so strong from being in that darker place that they decided to themselves about those things that they would never again be in that position. And that's what I call making a never again choice. Right? You do something, you hit a dark moment, you hit a dark patch in your world, and you make a never again choice. You say, I will never again be in this place. I will never again speak that way or say that thing. I will never again let this happen to me. I will never again miss the cut to that final because I'm going to work so hard that nobody can outwork me. And then you go back to the drawing board. You see, in every game, somebody's got to lose. We watch the NBA Finals right now is going on. I love basketball. And somebody will get to the final championship. 2 teams, in fact. And both of those teams have worked for an entire season and worked their butt off, and they have amazing, talented athletes, the best in the world. And one team is going to lose. And both teams are going to have done their visualizations. But somebody has to lose the game. And that's just how it is. And so the team that loses will ponder. And the team that wins will party. And the trick is to have a great balance of both. When you win, you party. When you lose, you ponder. And when you ponder, you don't ponder to the extent that it debilitates you, but you ponder to the extent that you say to yourself, okay, this was for a purpose. This happened to me for a reason because I need to learn this. And oftentimes it's hard to do in the moment. And so I understand that. In fact, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. It is difficult to have that type of composure. But it's something you can gain along the way, and that's what I want to encourage you to start to do is be able to look at what you've done, understand that the results are out of your control, and we know this in ballroom. We can do our best, and there can still be a bigger fish. There can still be somebody that is indeed better than we are when we step on the floor. And the goal, of course, is to be the best on the floor. And when you walk on the floor, unfortunately, the one thing we don't have control of in the ballroom world specifically is the judges. They can mark you however they want. They can mark you however they feel. And it's one element that is completely and utterly out of your control. And so you have to understand that there is an element, a piece to this, that because you can't control, you also can't let it affect your faith or your hope. And this is massively important. So why are you doing it? Why do you do this thing, this ballroom dance thing, right? For some of you out there, that might get to hear this or might get to listen to this, what is it? What's your thing, and why do you do it? Why do you love what you do so much? And that will keep you going. You see, I love to guide people on their path to sharing their soul and operating at their peak performance. And that's exciting. That's exciting to me, and I love to do it. I love to do it. I loved to be on the floor dancing. When I competed as a pro in Pro 10 dance, man, I loved it. Loved to be on the floor. Loved to share with people what I loved. Now, each of us have our own reasons, and I'm sure you do too. And so I have to really guide you to find your purpose in why you're dancing. Winning will be completely and utterly empty without your purpose and without a journey to back it up. And so let me continue on for just a second to kind of tie that together. We talked about the law of attraction, and it's great to study. So if you want to look it up, gosh, there's oodles and oodles of things written about the law of attraction, and so you can kind of dig into that a little bit more. We were talking about goals, and you're talking about visualizing. And as dancers, I know visualization for many of us can be a really powerful tool, especially being dancers. We have to be able to see what's going on and utilize that method of learning as one of our skill sets in dance. And those dancers that I've trained in the past that have challenge utilizing their visualization skills oftentimes have a challenge learning things faster in dance. Notice I said faster. Some of the dancers that are kinesthetic may take a little longer, but when they get it, they really get it. So it's kind of cool. But if you have a great skill at visualizing, it sort of serves you as a lighthouse for your ship, right? You will have a lighthouse because you can see the light shining out there. If you're out in the middle of the ocean, you can see that light, and it can guide you to steer away from the rocks or where to go to get into port. And so those goals and those visualizations serve as your lighthouse to be able to know you're on the right path and you're heading in the right direction. And so it's important to do that. Oftentimes you hear about writing down your goals, and that's really powerful, because when you write it down, it becomes tangible. It becomes something that is actually tangible in this world. However, doing the visualization has equal power. So if you haven't taken a moment to write down your stuff, your goals, write it down. You'd be surprised at how powerful it is and how many times you'll go back and look at that 10, 12, 20 years later and see that you accomplished it, but maybe a bit more than it. And it happens so frequently. So those goals and those visualizations serve as a lighthouse. It reminds me of a quote from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee had some really great teaching philosophies. So I love this quote. He says, "A goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at." And that's it. If you think about it for just a second, your goal is something to aim at. Now, why is that so important? Well, part of why it's so important is because the journey is the side that's the most important. And as I said earlier and alluded to, the journey is really what it's all about. If you had a win, and if you have ever gotten a win along the way that you didn't earn, that you didn't work for, the win is really no good. The win doesn't ultimately fulfill you. And honestly, if that's happened to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, you go out and you win. I had a couple that I was training, and in their first year, it was just sort of a beginning year. It was the first time they were doing open. Everything was brand new. We didn't have a whole lot of expectations. We knew that. In the second year, they had worked so hard to get to the place where they could win and be a contender for the win, that they got to, I think it was like their second or third comp, and they won. But as we looked around and we looked at who they had to dance against, what they found was that the couples they were dancing against weren't really of the caliber that they had become. Now, the interesting thing is that they were still about the same caliber for that level that they were competing in, but they had attained a new level. They had attained something greater because they had set out for this goal to become the best in that category, and they had attained it and they had passed it. So when they went out to compete against this group of kids, they realized very quickly that they were heads and tails above them, but they also started to realize that who they wanted to compete against was now the next level higher. So they won. I wasn't intending to put suspense in that story, but they won. And afterwards I said, so how does it feel? And they kind of looked at me and they went, it was okay. And it was kind of at a point where they knew they were going to win, and it no longer had the value because who they were dancing against was a group of kids that maybe didn't take their dancing as seriously as this couple did. And so the win had less value to it because they no longer had valid competition. And so they had to start competing up and going after that next level. And this happens all the time. See, you have to be able to look at who you're dancing against and say, wow, if we can go out there and dance our best and actually accomplish a win over the couples we're dancing against, will it have meaning because who we're dancing against is worthy of dancing against? Right? Nobody likes to play a game against somebody that they know they're going to beat. And so don't forget that. As you walk out on the floor every single time, you got to remember this is only a fun game if there's people that are worth dancing against. It's only rewarding to get the win when the people you're dancing against are excellent. It's only fun to play a game when the people you could play the game against could beat you. And this is simple. I don't know if you have any siblings, but when you play games with your younger siblings in the beginning and for a while, you play with them, but it's not that fun because you know they can't beat you. And so it loses its excitement and it's sort of a chore. But as they get older and they're capable of beating you, you'll find very quickly that it becomes more exciting to play the game. This is huge. This is a really big deal. Okay, so that's kind of addressing what the first part of your message. And so I'd like to address the second part of your message, which was just about competing this weekend and dancing at the Emerald Ball. I understand that the Emerald Ball is one of the major comps, and there's a little bit more weight to it because it's a slightly, it is a bigger comp than a lot of the comps that are out there, and definitely one of the majors. And so I wanted to chat with you a little bit about how to kind of prep for going into dancing. And hopefully this message gets to you before you have to go out and dance. Just some dance prep and some competition prep and things that you can do to be ready to go. One of them is being able to get into a peak state. Now, what's that mean? That means that your body's ready, your mind's ready, and your soul can become ready to dance. Okay, so really getting into a peak state can be done all sorts of different ways, and everybody kind of has their own little thing, and you probably have something that maybe you've discovered along the way. And so I want you to think about that. So I want you to think about what would you have to do to get into a peak state. Now, oftentimes what I have people do is put on their favorite playlist and some music that really is like pump up music to them. And I have them jump around kind of like you're at a dance party. And I know it sounds silly, but honestly, it really does help. Throw your arms in the air, jump up and down and dance around and just be silly and get your body and your mind and your soul all on the same page. And it's great. It's a great way to get into a peak state. The next thing I want to ask you is, what emotions do you think are going to serve you the best for this competition? For while you're on the floor specifically, what emotions do you feel are going to serve you the best through the competition? In between rounds, while you're resting in between the heats, what emotions are going to serve you? Is anger going to serve you? Is being frustrated going to serve you? If they're not, then you have to plan to not allow those things in your world, because they are a deterrent. They are something that will keep you back and hold you back from being able to accomplish your best. So what emotions serve you? So if you can take a moment to write it down, that would be ideal. You can just write it in your notes in your phone or on a piece of paper or something, whatever you think. Things like confidence and things like calm and patient are great emotions that can serve you. Things like excited and happy and joyous, and even for some of the dances, what kind of emotional states could help you in each of those dances, because you know your choreography, you know the story that you're trying to tell. Maybe the story requires a certain type of emotion. Maybe you have a sad piece in your rumba, or something along those lines. Right? So think about the emotional states that are going to help you and write those down. So if you haven't done it, pause the audio here and write it down. Okay, and then come back. Okay, so hopefully you did that. And now you've got to practice getting associated with those emotions, the ones that are going to be useful for you when you step on the floor. And so I have to ask you, because I'm going to tell you how to practice this a little bit, but let me ask you first, have you rehearsed? Have you practiced? Have you put in the time? Have you put in all the work and effort? Because you may be talented. I honestly don't know that I have seen you dance specifically. So you may be talented, but I can promise you that hard work beats talent every day of the week. But if you have talent and you work hard, then you start to get closer to being unstoppable. So have you rehearsed? See, one of the things I teach my athletes is to get clear on why we practice. Why do we practice? It's a big deal. Why do we practice? And here's what I've trained them to realize. And this is taken from a little bit of a speech from the great Phil Jackson, one of the greatest basketball coaches. And I kind of adjusted it, but the idea came from him. And so why do we practice? So that in the face of adversity, we can overcome all odds. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to ask you to memorize that. We practice so that in the face of adversity, we can overcome all odds. In the face of adversity, we can overcome all odds. This is a big deal. And honestly, it has really served the dancers and athletes that I've worked with throughout the years. And, it's a big deal. So I want you to think about it and remember it. Things will go wrong. Adversity will show up. Your shoe will break. Your dress zipper might bust. You might lose your dress in the luggage on your flight to the competition. I can't even make up the stories that I've lived through with my couples and myself in competing. I mean, the adversity that comes our way is ridiculous, and you have probably got your own set of stories as well. And so I'd like you to remember that we practice so that when that adversity shows up, we can overcome all odds. And this is so very important. Okay. Now, why did I go into that? Because when I'm going to ask you to practice getting associated with your emotions, what that's going to lead to is you asking the next question. When you walk out onto the floor, are you willing to let go and be able to allow your emotions and your body and your mind all combine into one unit and dance at their absolute finest. See, it's so important. Body, mind, and soul, the three have to connect in that great triad. The three have to connect for you to find that zone, that special place where you can perform at your highest and dance at your peak. It is so valuable to get into that place. So ask the part of you that takes care of your dancing, your technique, your performance, all of those things. Ask that part of you for permission to let go and combine together with all facets, mind, body, and soul, to allow you to dance at your finest and perform at your finest. But you notice there was that question. So I want you to do that right now. I know it sounds strange, but ask that part of you that takes care of all of that for permission to let go and let the emotional states that you have prepared for take care of your dancing when you walk on the floor. This is huge. And so now, if you can say yes to that question, if you can ask yourself and it can say yes, then it's time to get associated with those emotions, fully associated with those emotions, and help yourself walk onto the floor and dance with those states. So ask yourself again one more time. If you wrote them down, great. Let's go back and look at what you wrote down as to being the positive emotions that you'd like to experience. So what states would you like to be on the floor and even off the floor and in between dances? Decide how you'd like to feel. And it seems so strange, but we do our emotions and you can do it. Decide how you would like to feel. And then let's make that happen. You're going to design it. If you're great at visualizations, great, design it. Things will come your way. Adversity will come your way. As you said, you can't tell the future. But you can prepare. And you can vibrate at a frequency where the things that you're shooting after will start to find their way to you, but not instantly. Thank goodness there's a little bit of a delay. Because can you imagine if I visualized in my head that I'd love an elephant in my studio and it happened instantly, this would be a big problem. So we have to have some delay in there to kind of protect us. So you've got to get fully associated. Now, how do you get fully associated with an emotion? Well, it's easy. You have such great memories, and just like you said, you can visualize and you can create a feeling and an experience in your mind in the future, in the past, or even remember something that's right now happening in the present. So right now, for a second, I want you to just take a moment and think about a time when you were super happy. When you were super happy. When you were happy in a way that just was so fulfilling. And if you can think of that time, I want you to remember exactly where you were at and what you were doing and what the light was like in the room. Were you inside? Were you outside? Who were you with? What kind of words were you saying to yourself? Was there music? Were there birds chirping? Remember it. Get fully associated with it. In fact, put yourself in it and see yourself in it right then at that moment. And feel it and experience it. And now I want you to think about what you would have to do to double that experience, to double that feeling. What would you have to do? Would you have to make it brighter? Would you have to make it louder or softer, more quiet? What would you have to do to double that experience, to make that feeling twice as good, and to really get associated with that emotion? Do it right now. Think about that. Get into it. See the things around you. See everything in brighter color if that helps. See it more clearly and really experience yourself in that state. Do it now. And what could you do? Ask yourself again, what can you do to double that emotion, double that feeling so that it was twice as good, maybe even better than it felt in that moment, in that time? What would you have to do? Think about it and feel it. Feel it right now. What would the temperature be in that scenario? And try to feel that temperature. Where would you feel it in your body? Try to put that feeling in and experience it right now. If you need to close your eyes, that's great. I usually do. because it helps me visualize and see it, but feel that way right now. And if you can get yourself to feel that way right now, then what if you could do that while you were dancing? Well, guess what? You can. Guess what? Many of my athletes have done it through the years. And the more we can get in and access those emotional states that are positive, that we want to experience, that we want to feel, the more our mind and our body and soul can connect together in the best triad possible to be able to execute what we want to execute at the highest possible form. And that's it. It's that simple. And you can keep seeing that movie over and over again. See that movie and see everything as clearly as you can. Make sure you can feel it. Make sure you can hear the sounds that represented it. And you can play that movie anytime you want. So if you built that right now, you can build this anytime you'd like. Anytime. You can do it right now. You can do it in 10 minutes. You can build it again. And you can do it again. And so now what I'm going to ask you to do is really go to that list of emotions and emotional states that are going to be useful for you when you walk out on that floor to dance. And go and get associated with each one of them and get them prepared so that when you walk out onto the floor, you can take that with you and dance that on the floor. This is an incredible experience, and I can hardly wait for you to try it, and I hope it works out wonderfully for you. But I can tell you, don't forget, when you walk out on the floor and you leave it all out on the floor and you do your best on the floor, the one thing that is still out of your hands is how the judges mark you. That's in their hands. It's their deal. It's what they do. So let it be theirs, and you take this part of it and experience exactly what you want and how you want it to be. I hope this helps. I hope this is at least a little bit of guidance towards where you're headed. I so appreciate your candid message to me and your questions about what you've been hearing and what you've been learning. I want to kind of close up with a couple of things. One, winning is just a goal, but a win without the journey is meaningless. And so you have to enjoy the journey, which means that every second, every minute that you get to dance, that you get to be on the floor, you have to be able to enjoy those seconds, those minutes, because they go away so fast. So I implore you to enjoy every step of the way, and you can do that by getting fully associated with your emotional states and the ones that you want to live on the floor. And I promise you, this is just the first step. And when you can do more of this, when you can take this to the next level, which many of my athletes have, they've reported back to me an experience like none other. Like most people wish they could have in executing their form of what they do, whether it's gymnastics or dance or marketing. And it is incredible. And so I wish that for you. I wish you to attain it, but this is just the first step. This is just the first part. And if you can do this part, it gets better and better. Now, I'd like to address one last thing you had pointed out in your message, and you said that your parents don't really kind of believe in the life coaching side of things. You know what? I feel for you, and I understand so much. I understand. When I first got into this stuff, this life coaching stuff, and neurolinguistics, and trying to get into the business of helping people perform at their peak, life coaching was such a people made fun of it, and they said, "Oh, you're a life coach," and I had so much slack when I first got into it. And nowadays, I have to point out that there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. Nobody is broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You are a normal athlete trying to find a way to perform at your peak. And coaches are there to help you. You can call us a coach. You can call us a life coach. You can call us mentors. Whatever it is, you can call us whatever you'd like. But the truth of the matter is that every successful person from the beginning of time has had their mentors and their advisors and their coaches, whatever you'd like to call them. But literally from the beginning of time. I mean, you can go back to the earliest known records of humans, and the successful people always had their mentors and the people that supported them in making the decisions that they had to make, whether they were hard decisions or internal decisions in running a country, or whether they were easy decisions. It didn't matter. They always had their mentors. One of the great books out there that is amazing is a book called Think and Grow Rich. It's an amazing book, and it's a conglomeration and modeling of some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. People like Henry Ford and Andrew Carnegie. And the mastermind group that each of these men created, and these mastermind groups that continue to be created, so that we can attain the highest levels of success. So what I can tell you right now is it's okay if your parents don't quite get it, if they don't quite agree, but I can tell you every athlete in a pro sport, basketball, football, gymnastics, every single one of them has their peak performance coach. They all have their trainers and the coaches that move them and teach them how to attain the highest level of their capacity. And so you're not weird. And I'm sorry that if your parents don't support it or they don't get it, I'm sorry that they don't get it. But I'll tell you what, if you want to attain the highest levels of your ability, you're going to need some mentors. You're going to need some coaches to be able to take you there. And honestly, we know that as dancers. Otherwise, we wouldn't hire our dance coaches. But I'll tell you what, there's a special breed out there of trainers, neurolinguistic programmers, and peak performance trainers that can really take you to the next level. I'm happy you found your way to my podcast, and I hope that my messages have really started to inspire you, which it sounds like they have. And I hope that as we continue down this path, that I can continue to lend a hand to you to help you attain your highest level of dance and or whatever it is that you choose to go after in your life moving forward. Anyway, I hope this message helps you, and I hope you can go out and really have a great experience. And remember, we practice so that in the face of adversity, we can overcome all odds. And so that's why we practice, not to be perfect. So don't go be perfect. Go and do what you've practiced. Practice these emotional states, get them ready, get fully associated, and take them on the floor with you when you go out to dance. And I wish you the best of luck as you go into your important weekend. So hope this helps, and look forward to hearing from you. I'd love to hear another message of how this stuff worked for you, and if it worked out for you, and how the comp went. So let me know, and wish you the best. Take care.
Are you loving Magic for Life? Please like and share our podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Want more magic for your life? Join me for some great Facebook Lives on the official Facebook page at Michael A. Johnson Official.